SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, coronavirus, poison crown, toxic crown. I remember January. It is nothing. I remember February. It is nothing. I remember March. It is nothing. No, it is something. Walking to and from the train station, wondering if I had come into contact. Just before the lockdown, Hamilton canceled. I thought of my trip to April. One I wanted to plan for July. It is now October of the year 2020, Anno Domini. The toxic crown has seeped into my daily life for so long. What used to be normal is a fantasy that will not be again. What will be is a dream yet to come. There is only now this moment to live, and so many cannot breathe. I could not go to Portland to visit my best friend. I could not visit my mother and my family. I could not, for the sake of them, for me, and the whole of the national and international community shared by all, common, public. I am linked by humanity, of shared genetics, of shared vulnerability to the virus. I acknowledge this. In community, what is done to one is done to all, shared by all. Do I fall prey to the toxins around me, spread by lies and fear, poisonous hatred brewing through social media reverb chambers, echoed voices of face boomers denying masks? No. The discussion is no longer civil when one side only offers death by white supremacy, by apathy, by profits. Community is divided by any means to grasp power and hold it to crush any dissent, for gain within and without the country. I need good citizens. The holier than thou, proper English purist bullshit, you're not well, you're good, meaning of the word good. Bonus civis. I wear the mask, I fear the virus, and I fear what it would do to those around me, to those I care about, to those I know someone else cares about. Fear does not make us weak when we act with urgency, when we act with compassion, when we act with purpose. I want community to become more than a slogan to sell the latest product, more than hollow words spoken in suburban mayoral races about a group of people who occupy the town from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. only, more than stock images. I will leave with this. We are the people striving for a better union with justice and tranquility, a common bond that we defend each other against injustice and disease. We are the people that can ensure the health and welfare of ourselves. We are the people defending our liberties and those of the future generations. And only as the people can we win.
What can you even say? I'm pretty sick of talking about it, and I'm pretty sick of hearing about it by now. It's like that nagging scab that you want to just pick and pick till you get rid of it, but you need it to heal over, but you don't want to give it the time. And then next thing you know, it's bloody and raw again, and then you have to start the whole process over. And you just can't get any escape from it. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. The power is gone. You don't have any power. You never had power. It's just, sometimes it's just a run-on sentence that goes nowhere. You just talk, and now I'm just, there's nothing you can do about anything, right? Because the people that are supposed to care don't care, and the people that don't care even less. I was going to try to record this in a quiet place, but I have no space for that. Every part of my home is repurposed to something else. And now I'm outside walking around doing chores and getting the yard ready for the gardeners, and You can hear the birds and the trash trucks, and this recording probably sucks, but I don't know what else to do. I usually hate the sound of my own voice, so whatever. I probably won't ever listen to this again. I have no energy to even rant anymore, you know? I thought I was gonna make this recording and it was gonna be some loud and violent, aggressive diatribe about mask wearing and people being assholes and having no hope, but I don't even have the energy for that anymore. It's just been a long year, a long life. Somebody with a chronic illness, trying to persuade people that viruses are real and sickness is real and can wreak havoc on your body, on your finances, you know, and now it's happening to the masses, but they don't want to give it the credit it deserves. They want to call it a conspiracy, or they want to call it a government, a government pandemic, or some kind of money-making scheme, or some kind of, conspiracy against them, some kind of democratic, conspiracy by the Democrats to shut down and inflict pain on red states, or the red states are doing great jobs and the blue states are doing shit jobs, or, everyone's pissed off at everyone else. The reality is, you get sick sometimes, and sometimes you can't beat it, sometimes you can't fight it. But when you have an opportunity to be able to fight it, you take the chance and you do everything you can. Jesus, I don't even like using the word fight. Stupid, it's tiring and it's lazy. But I'm not even in a place mentally to care anymore. Somehow, I don't know, maybe I am. I guess that's probably what's so hard about all this, is you don't even know where you stand, you don't even know where you factor in, you don't even know what to do. You have this relentless nagging feeling like you should be doing something but you can't do anything. I guess that's kind of parallel to what I've been feeling my whole life with cystic fibrosis and trying to fight to stay alive, or trying to be a responsible person with finances and working, but also not being able to, and feeling lazy and complicit, and just all this kind of guilt and helplessness in a way, but also a lot of power in surviving. But how do you explain that to somebody that's too stubborn to see that wearing a mask isn't being weak? It's actually being proactive and strong and having a plan and doing what you can to make all efforts possible to not get sick or not have, bad things happen. And even when you do all the preventative measures, and even when you do everything you can, it still might not be enough. It still might not work. You still might get sick. You still might die. But now even death doesn't even matter much. Death isn't even the worst thing anymore. Or maybe it never has been the worst thing. I don't know. Maybe the worst thing is not caring, ambivalence. Maybe being broke is the worst thing. Maybe not having a job, not having a path in life, not having your own thoughts, not having food, not having a home. I don't know, what is worse? What is better? Are these even guidelines to live by? For all the uncertainty I had in my life before the pandemic, before COVID-19, in some ways I have more uncertainty now. Because not only is my life uncertain, the fishbowl that I lived in is more uncertain. It's like I could deal with a certain amount of uncertainty inside of myself. Because as somebody with a chronic illness, that's like a, I don't want to say comfortable place to be, but it's a familiar place to be. But the world around you was relatively stable in a way. You could kind of count on a lot of things to go a routine way. You could kind of count on things. You could count on the mail to be there every afternoon on the weekday at 3 p.m. But now you don't even know. Now the fishbowl is on a table that's on a fault line. The earthquakes are happening every minute. It's hard to make sense of the external world and the internal world as someone with a chronic illness inside of a pandemic, inside of a conspiracy theory. I mean, is a virus real? Sure, why not? I've had many viruses. Last year I had 4, including a type of coronavirus. A lot less brutal than the one that's called COVID-19. But it wreaked havoc on my body. I was sick for about 4 weeks. And then I had rhinovirus. And then I had RSV. And then I got the flu, even though I got the flu shot. I also got food poisoning. That was all my 2019, including a fundoplication for severe acid reflux that was silently aspirating into my transplanted lungs and causing rejection. Not to mention the 2 cataract surgeries I've had for my eyes in 2019. So my 2019 was a shithole. And my 2020 was supposed to be this glorious rebirth. I had a son in December of 2019. 2 weeks to go in the year. My son was born. A week later there was Christmas. A week later it was the new year. 2020, symmetry, hindsight, everything in the rearview mirror was all the shit that I had gone through to get new lungs, to get more ability to have a son, grow my family. I was brimming with hope. And then COVID-19 happened. And all that optimism and hope went to shit. And now we're near the end of 2020 and I don't really see much progress. I don't see much in the way of a path out of this. You have these fantasies of a vaccine that only took 6 months to procure, but takes years, if not a decade, to make an effective viral vaccination. You know, and now you can probably hear the leaf blowers and the weed whackers. Oh shit. Hold on. Can't even escape anything.
For me, the lockdown began in March. Uncertain of how to spend my days, I visited a local nursery while they were still open and tried some gardening to occupy my time. Of everything I chose to grow, tomatoes, rosemary, peppermint, my favorite were the sunflowers. I find sunflowers to be a beautifully odd thing. The petals look like sharp teeth around a mouth they are too big for. The blooms spend their days chasing the sun across the sky. I would watch these awkward yellow monsters in their daily worship. For a few hours a day, I would sit in my garden and read aloud to them. A silly thing to do, perhaps, but it made me happy. In my practice as an artist, I frequently work with gold leaf. I have no great love for gold, but find its symbolic nature to be significant. When working with the metal, I'm constantly reminded of my high school English teacher back in Texas. She wore a large sunflower brooch on her cardigan every day. For one lesson, she described the nuance of the term Gilded Age, a phrase used to describe a time of economic wealth and cultural splendor. But, my teacher warned, like all things that are gilded, beneath a shiny layer of thin gold lies a core that is rotting from within. I think of this and wonder, is that what we are now? A rotting underbelly beneath a thin, shimmering blanket of gold, a mere 1% thick? Perhaps this new plague has caused that underlayer to fester, and the gold is beginning to tarnish with our dissatisfaction. We grow tired of chasing the sun, day after day, hoping there will be a reprieve at the end, where we don't have to chase, but can be still and at peace. It's been half a year since I planted my sunflowers at the beginning of the pandemic. They no longer chase the sun. The summer heat came, and with it my yellow sunflowers were burnt in their daily worship. The heat answered by immense fires in the west. The sky above my home shaded to a toxic, sickly yellow. The ashes snowing on my garden. My flowers are still there. Spines shriveled and dry, mouths gaping open and toothless. But they still stand.
I'm sitting in bed, the bed that my depression knows very well. And I'm thinking of things that are green. And I'm thinking of a poem, a green poem by Sam, grade 1. Have you ever seen a green banana? They grow on a tree. You can't eat them yet. Wait until they are ripe. Green bananas. And I think of green as rebirth. And rebirth as in something can be grown again. Maybe. And I think of money, grass, green bananas. And it makes me always come back to my depression because it's always there. Green is not something I would associate with depression, but I would like to, because it means a new day. Something about tomorrow that gives me hope. And then I think about the Trump flag that's blowing in the wind, as big and obnoxious as ever around the corner from my house. And I think, how can people vote for someone so horrendous and disgusting, so void of human decency? And it brings me back to hope. That enough people will hopefully get this guy out of office and we can stop killing people. And killing people that are marginalized, from marginalized communities. Then it brings me back to money, because, well, people from marginalized communities don't have a lot on their side. They have to keep working. I'm sitting here studying for tests in my luxurious home because my parents are retired and the money is flowing comfortably, and I'm waiting to pass an exam and to finish my master's. And hopefully, it always leads me back to the worst part of my life, which is my days with chronic fatigue syndrome at 26 years old. And how COVID-19, or the coronavirus, is leaving people with symptoms just like I had months after they've been over the flu of the coronavirus. And I think I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, to be bedridden, brain fog, not able to read. Hurts to sit in a car. It physically hurt me to sit in a car for 5 minutes where I just had to lay down. As I had to pause for a moment because my dad is in the next room at his psychiatrist's Zoom appointment, and he is dealing with an advanced stage of a rare form of Parkinson's. So I heard him crash just now, and he fell to the ground in front of the psychiatrist on the screen. So I had to get up and help him. And then the psychiatrist, while he was my dad was in the restroom, he asked me pretty intimate questions about what my dad's going through and my viewpoint. So that was unexpected, and so that's my foray into my dad is also sick, and he is having a really hard time dealing with being sick. And he's 72 and just been sick for a few years now. Probably one of the most dynamic people I've ever known is my dad. Running marathons when I was a kid, getting up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym every day. Probation officer in the gang unit in LA, on the cover of LA Times for that. And now he can't even walk by himself and has a hard time having a conversation. So I think about what it is to be sick, and then I think about what's going on in our country and the color green and hope and rebirth. Really hard to grasp that right now. So I will leave you with this, my only hope right now, as I go to my psychiatrist tomorrow and discuss my meds that aren't working, is to vote. And vote. It's the best we can do. And to give a damn while you're voting would also help. Thanks.
When I think about the COVID crisis that we're all living through right now, it's hard not to draw parallels to the AIDS crisis in the 1980s. Both were viruses that seemed to come out of nowhere and take the world by storm. Both led to catastrophic suffering and loss of life. And both were generally ignored by the government, partly because the president at the time was concerned that the existence of a pandemic on his watch would reflect poorly on him. There are important differences, of course. The virus that causes COVID is transmitted by everyday activities like talking or even breathing, and it seems like anyone and everyone could be at risk of contracting it. The virus that causes AIDS, on the other hand, is primarily transmitted through sex and injecting drug use, and in the early days, it looked like it was only affecting gay men and drug users. It must have been easy at the time for the American people to see that and think that they didn't have anything to worry about. They were the right kind of people, they made good choices in their lives. Why not let the virus run its course and burn itself out? Sure, the loss of life would be sad, but wouldn't it just be the drug users and the homosexuals? Wouldn't that just kind of work itself out and get rid of the virus? We did the same thing with the drug overdose crisis. Again, it's so easy to dismiss the victims of an epidemic if they're the wrong kind of people. Black people had been dying of cocaine and heroin overdoses for decades before we even recognized it as an epidemic. Really, it was only after white suburbanites and their children started dying that we sat up and took notice. It should be different this time. It should be harder to think that way this time. The coronavirus can strike anyone, anywhere. The activities that spread it aren't sinful. Heck, listening to a choir singing in a church is probably one of the most dangerous activities around. But if history doesn't repeat itself, it certainly rhymes. In the early days of the pandemic, the worst hit places were the densely populated cities. That makes sense. It's spread through close contact with other humans, so places where people are densely packed together are ripe for outbreaks. But it turns out those cities and dense population centers tend to elect Democratic mayors and governors, so it became a blue state problem. The federal government even stepped back and left the response coordination to the individual states in the hopes that they could just pin the responsibility for the heavier outbreaks on their political rivals. From the podium of the White House briefing room, we even heard the president say that the death count would be lower if you just left out the blue states. Even all these years later, our mindset came right back to casting blame for a crisis on the people most affected by that crisis. I don't know if blaming the victim is a uniquely American thing, but I know that we are very good at it. Whether we're asking a woman what she was wearing when she was assaulted, or pointing out that a black person shot by police was no angel, we're constantly drawing a causal link between behavior and outcomes. We do it for good things, too. We love to attribute someone's wealth and success to the good choices they must have made rather than just dumb luck or beneficial circumstances. But it's particularly insidious when we apply it to sickness. It creates a stigma around being sick, a vague sense that someone who's sick must have made bad choices and now must suffer the consequences. That stigma is the reason so many people now refuse to practice basic public health measures like wearing masks. A person might think, a mask isn't going to protect me, so why should I wear one? Then they hear, well, the purpose of the mask isn't to protect you, it's to protect others from you. And the instinctive response is some defensive variant of, well, I'm not sick, so I don't need to wear the mask. If I were sick, I would just stay home. You can have mountains of evidence piling up show that you can transmit the virus without even knowing that you're sick, but you just can't get around the basic sentiment of, I can't be sick, I'm a good person. The virus doesn't care if you're a good person or if you're a serial killer.
It doesn't care if you use drugs, it doesn't care if you have sex, it doesn't care if you have a good job or a family. It only cares about one thing. Do you have cells in which it can replicate? The way to beat this virus has nothing to do with who you are as a person. It has everything to do with simply depriving it of cells in which it can replicate. So we stay home. We stay 6 feet apart in public. We wear masks and walk one way in the grocery store. We watch a ton of Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones. For some reason, they're always on the TV. We flinch a bit when Indy walks into a crowded market, thinking, all those people should probably be a bit more spread out from each other. We wonder if we'll ever be comfortable in a crowd again. We think about our own choices throughout the day. Each little choice feels a little heavier than it used to. Should I go to the grocery store and risk exposing myself to the virus, or should I just have pasta for dinner again? Should I go to the gym? What about a restaurant? The potential for each of these decisions to have life or death consequences weighs on you. Was it really worth going to Safeway yesterday? What if I got COVID for a loaf of sourdough? Should I have just learned to make it back in April with everyone else? If I got COVID at the store, will people blame me for going there? If I got it at the store last week and spread it around when I went back this week, is it my fault if there's an outbreak? I question and dissect every choice that I make these days with the knowledge that even if I do everything right, I could still contract the virus. My anxieties have anxieties. Even in the best of times, all this would wreak havoc on our mental health, but add in the isolation, the fires, the political uncertainty, the racial injustice, and frankly the fact that sometimes it feels like you're the only person taking it all seriously and it becomes completely unbearable. I'm trying to find silver linings. Maybe we'll learn from the experience. Maybe we'll come out the other end with a deeper appreciation of our own vulnerability and not be so quick to assume a person's circumstances are the result of their choices. Maybe we'll all be more resilient and equipped with the tools and skills we need to live and work in a post-pandemic world. I haven't had friends visit in months, but I've had more virtual game nights with friends, both local and across the country, than we ever did before we were all forced inside. Friends and family are calling each other just to check in. I hope that when this is all over, we can retain those skills. If we can, then maybe the virus that forced us all to stay apart can help bring us together again.
I started a running list of things I was mad about with COVID back in maybe March or April. I can't remember. Anyways, the following is a list of things I've been mad about. Racist Asian and beer jokes before I got here. Gaslighting jokes about washing hands. Canceled my 30th birthday. Outbreak trending on Netflix. When my grocery shopping dream started. Domestic violence reports start to skyrocket. Reports of returns to traditional gender roles, women's jobs and work being the first sacrificed. Fake treatments and cures, hydroxychloroquine, bleach. PPE issues. Deaths, including by suicide of healthcare professionals. Protests against stay-at-home orders. Protests against mask requirements. Neighborhood parties devoid of precautions. Using haircuts as a point of rebellion. Bigotry as defense. Corporatizing masks. Huge increase of the ableist SpongeBob meme. The neighborhood rally. Driving habits becoming more reckless. 45 tries to strike down the ACA again. People purposefully coughing in others' faces. Not being able to see my best friend in over a year. Gaslit around visits. Gaslit around photos. Not being able to go out, date, have sex. Anger at how much this has affected the arts and artists, while that's almost entirely how people are occupying their time. TV, movies, books, comedy, plays, etc. I don't want to hear about people coming for the arts ever again. Sadness for younger people losing out on milestones like prom, graduation, college, the financial fucked upness of it all. People not wanting to divulge their status. A loved one's work can't do anything before they speak to corporate after an employee tests positive. Corporate said that because no one was there over the weekend, approximately 48 hours, that it's all good and everyone should just go back in and disinfect the place themselves. Then they're saying they can only recommend people who are in contact with this person to get tested, but they can't force it, and also it's entirely honor system based about who comes forward as having been close, and if my loved one wants their results back today, $200. As opposed to in X many days, at which point, if they were positive, so are dozens of other people now. All the people getting diagnosed with cancer right now, who have to do it alone. The research showing there will be a considerable rise in preventable cancer deaths because of missed screenings during COVID. Teachers writing wills along with their syllabi. Teachers meeting about how to have socially distant active shooter drills. People inviting themselves over. People who still just don't get it. 45 admitting to premeditated genocide. I stopped keeping track in September. I don't know how to describe just how unlivable, oppressive, and hopeless the situation feels sometimes. I don't know how we mourn this loss. We haven't had the space to register the individuals, and let's be honest, mass shootings have even gotten lost when they've been too close together. We have concentration camps with forced sterilizations, fires burning entire states and blocking the sky, police murdering Black people so consistently that it necessitates mass demonstrations during a pandemic as a deadly virus ravages us. How could we possibly mourn all that deserves to be mourned and exist as we do now? Maybe this is just what life is like when we live during extremes, but I feel more like one of those organisms that lives in deep-sea underwater vents than I do a human. I'm sad and I'm scared and I'm tired of being both of those things. I'm going decent stretches of time between actual panic attacks, but then someone passes too close in the supermarket. Or maybe like the other day, I forgot my mask during a brief public interaction for the first time. I panicked and just sat in my car and cried after the exchange for the whole sad reality of it. Times like these start my brain spiraling and I become terrified. This state of being just feels so inescapable and inevitable sometimes. I really don't want to die from this thing, and I might genuinely lose my sanity if anyone close to me dies from it. I don't know, I've thought about death a lot, but besides the initial few days of shock when I truly didn't know anything, fear of death hasn't been part of my cancer experience. People ask me if that's why I started making art again, if I felt some pressing time limit to my life to get stuff done. I didn't, truly not at all. But I do somewhat with COVID. I'm actually really, really scared of dying from this thing. I wonder if any group of Americans will have died for a more American reason, individual liberty above all else. We already carried around some serious hubris in regards to health, but COVID has really put that on display. Yes, some people will get it, but not me. Even if I get it, I think I'd be fine. Fuck you, I'm not wearing a mask. How can we do this when our own CDC gives us no concrete directives, no collective action? All onus is entirely on the individual person, the individual company, the individual state. I don't know, but I'm sad wondering how many people will need to die before we figure out we can only do this if we do it together. Because our inability to stop, ever, even with over 200,000 dead, we just keep pushing forward again and again. Schools are opening. There are more people on the road every day. We will truly just work ourselves and our country to death. And I don't understand why we can't stop. Why the fuck can't we stop? Stop. Just stop. It makes the dialogue in Terminator grotesquely accurate. Listen and understand that virus is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop, ever, until you are dead. That's the difference between our human constructs and a viral agent. Since cancer, I have a hard time acknowledging our imposed systems that cause more harm than good, and COVID has thrown into sharp relief just how loose and entirely alterable those human conceptions are. We now have work from home, Zoom meetings, online, in-person only appointments, rent and mortgage breaks, UBI, bail bond, the death penalty, prison release, lack of co-pays and insurance checks, accessibility with online classes, virtual meetings, virtual comedy shows, virtual every fucking thing all of a sudden. So I respect the devastation of this virus and the absoluteness of its reality. It's a horror based in such bodily truth, and that can't be denied or lied about in the end. But I really don't know, though. I'm hearing about Orange County opening up schools, but they're monitoring for new outbreaks. I mean, I guess I had been curious about what living through a mass psychogenic illness would be like, because it truly seems like the game plan is the cliche definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. The only difference in results will be more unnecessary death and pain. I appreciate histories of illness as a young adult with cancer, and now someone living through COVID. I've researched and lived and thought about illness more than I ever expected to. But still, never in a million years did I imagine I'd live through a global pandemic of this scale, or witness the world's mass response to illness. And I wish we respected this moment more. I wish we had the humility to look to the AIDS crisis. I think about this line from The Normal Heart a lot. Quote, "We're losing an entire generation. Choreographers, playwrights, dancers, actors, all those plays that won't get written now. All those dances never to be danced." End quote. Because this time we're not losing a generation, we're losing an entire population. And I truly have to distract my brain when studies come out showing we could have prevented 84% of deaths if we'd locked down 2 weeks earlier, or that we could get the pandemic under control in 4 to 6 weeks if everyone just wore masks. What do you do with information like that? Maybe that's what feels so oppressive, knowing that there are solutions, there are remedies available to us right now. That's it. Our American exceptionalism around individual liberty is our greatest enemy, and I'm so angry about it. I didn't get through cancer to be stuck in a deadly situation I can't escape. But I can't, because some people want to go to a restaurant tonight, and there's nothing I can do about that. That's what this is. Trump has been an extended abusive relationship I didn't consent to. And COVID is the U.S. in a hostage situation I don't consent to being in, and I want the fuck out of it. But now Trump has COVID. I wonder what that'll do to the narrative. Can you imagine a parallel universe where Reagan contracted HIV? I used to have grocery shopping dreams back in March. Last night I had your average dream made up of random scenes. But for the first time, my dream self moved through my subconscious as if COVID was there as well. I was avoiding crowds and gatherings, not allowing myself any kind of human touch or closeness. Now that it's seeped into my subconscious, I don't know where else to go. My only hope is that the side effects from this thing are so extensive and the ripples so large that it only makes sense for a few changes to be for the better.